and welcome to Star Piece, part of GOCast podcast, where we get to know your favorite personalities and leaders in the world of Pokemon Go a little bit better. I'm your host, Chris. And if you can't tell because you're watching the video version, who's actually speaking? It's me raising my hand. Sorry, Lachlan, but that's my co-host over there. That's Lachlan.
Hiya.
It might be Kyle, actually. Wow, what a curveball.
Might be an imposter somewhere.
Yeah, I have no idea. Lachlan, though, how are you doing? You can't say just okay. Don't do it.
I am snorlaxing. Is that a mood? Snorlaxing?
Are you sleeping? I think that's just sleeping or eating. One of those two.
Or just
I don't see
snorlaxing, like relaxing.
Oh, relaxoing.
Ah, yes, the German Snorlax, relaxo.
That's right. Yeah.
That's what my hundo's called.
Okay. Well, speaking of hundos, our guest for this episode is none other than David. Also goes by the first Hamtaro, or just Hamtaro, is my understanding. Has the podcast As the Pokeball Turns, which is, as of right now, I suppose I should say, just have my bases covered, an interview-based podcast. PKMN Stories, which I'm unfamiliar with, but I'm
that's
hoping
his in-game name.
Oh, for real?
So if he's on your
Pokemon
if
Go,
he's on your
we need
friends
to fix
list,
that.
it's a different name.
Okay, well, we need to fix that. And I'm just so excited to talk to you about your process, your history with Pokemon, and the like. And I'm just assuming that Lachlan is too. I haven't checked, but I'm thinking you're also excited, Lachlan. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, that's what I thought. Great. Okay.
I like the energy. I like the energy.
I'm trying to
All
channel my inner Texan.
There you go.
Oh, just say
Yeehaw.
y'all a lot and eat some Whataburger. That's about all you need to know.
Ooh, no, that yeehaw was way
Yeehaw.
too tame.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was good. That's impressive.
Let me
I
get
can't-
away from the mic
practice.
so we're not clipping.
Okay.
Yeehaw!
Oh my god.
That's the best
okay.
getting hot.
I can't. All right, so we've got David here today. So David, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about, I guess the best place to start would be your history with Pokemon and the franchise, just sort of in general. Where
Are we
is
starting
David
at the
coming
very
from?
beginning? It's a very good place to start.
Yeah, it's the very beginning, the dawn of time, as far as David is concerned.
So it was a rainy day on a Monday back in May 21st, 1990.
Okay.
I was
90s
very
kid.
difficult.
Huzzah.
Yeah, I was a nice kid. Yeah. My dad brought a cheeseburger to my mother. One, she was giving me birth. And
Nice.
anyway,
Giving
let's
you
fast
birth?
forward. Yeah, let's fast
Giving
forward
you
a couple
breath.
years.
Giving you breath.
But yes, my name is David. I am the host of As the Pokeball Turns. I am known by many names. My in-game name is Pokemon Stories. I'm also known by Hamtaro. And the first Hamtaro is just because, Hamtaro is copyrighted. So unfortunately, I couldn't claim that. But
Oh,
I'm the one after that. So Hamtaro may be number 0, but I'm number 1.
all right. We love
Yep.
that. So actually, I did want to ask you about the Hamtaro thing. So are you a fan?
Yes, I grew up with Hamtaro, but that's not why I have the name, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
Do
familiar
tell.
with that Pokemon.
They could have been. They
It's
could have been Pokemon.
It's the great value version of Pikachu. Think of it that way.
Yep.
What's a great value?
Oh, you don't have a Walmart over there. That's fine. It's where people who don't. I'm not gonna go there. Anyway,
It's a wall.
so Hamtaro actually came from when I was a Discord admin. I still am, and the owner of the Discord hated Hamtaro. There was a chat going on, and he's like, "I really cannot stand Hamtaro." Now, me, I'm a bit of a troll. I'm a bit of like to mess with people. So I changed my Discord name, or I changed my profile pic on Discord to Hamtaro, and I tagged him as like, "Oh, so you hate me?" or something like that. I did that, and then he changed my name, and he had it set to where you can't change your nickname on Discord. So I was always stuck as Hamtaro, and it just stuck, and that's how my community kind of knew me as Hamtaro throughout the entire DFW Metroplex. They always just called me as Hamtaro.
Now, for those outside of the southern parts of the US, can you just briefly outline what the DFW area is?
The DFW is one of the biggest metropolitan areas in the States. It's Dallas-Fort Worth, so it's Texas.
Yep, it's like just a whole area of Texas, right? It's sort of like when I say Chicagoland, it's much more than Chicago, and like DFW is like Dallas and Fort Worth, like that collected a whole area, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, cool. That's cool. So I am also a fan of Hamtaro. I played the Game Boy games back in the day. I had the theme song memorized. I used to watch the show all the time, and I had been waiting for at least 10 years for somebody else to come across where I'd be like, "Oh yeah, Hamtaro was awesome," because nobody cared about that show. I felt like at the time I was like alone, you know. Really, really good games too. Really, really good games.
I loved it too. It felt kind of weird liking it at that age because I just felt like it was more of a little kids show, but I really enjoyed it. I just like the idea of Hamtaro having all these friends.
I think it was just like so stylized. It was adorable. Yeah.
Yes. Now, Chris, since you like Hamtaro, we've got to sing the song. We've got to. Come on. If you're a fan, we've got to sing the song for the people listening. This podcast.
I have recently tried in a similar scenario when I was like, "Oh, I know the song. I don't remember it anymore."
Okay, I'll try to help you out. It's Hamtaro time. Coochie, 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 coo. Hamtaro. When we work together, it's much better. My best friend. We like sunflowers. He's come from Trump. Now I am
I'm out after that. Like,
so
I remember the
thank
beginning.
You for joining us back after the brief copyright interlude that we have just cut out.
Hey, that's no copyright. I'm singing it with my own voice.
Yeah, exactly. This is
karaoke.
You tell the happy birthday people that.
Well, they're vindictive. That's a different story.
That is true. They have no soul.
Yeah, that's right.
And no shoes.
Speaking of cute animated things, let's move away from Hamtaro, even though I don't want to. I would rather kind of talk about that for the next hour or so. But let's talk about Pokemon. So where did your journey with Pokemon begin? Aside from the cheeseburger and that rainy Monday, where are we at the beginning of David's Pokemon journey?
So actually, when Pokemon first debuted, I was actually a bit of a hater of Pokemon, believe it or not.
Whoa.
Blasphemy.
I had no good reason why. I just didn't like it. Because it was popular, basically. That's why I said I was a hater at the time. Mm-hmm. I was so bad that I would actually tell on people who had Pokemon cards, they bring them to elementary school. So I was always responsible for people getting their cards confiscated. Because, back in the day, people were trying to bring cards, trade them, and all that stuff. So I'd always tell on people. That's how much I hated it. Now, what helped me was my mom bought me Pokemon Red for Christmas with the Game Boy Color. And I was like, oh my gosh, why would you buy this for me? So eventually I played and I just became hooked with the Pokemon franchise at that point. I played Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, and I really love Bulbasaur. I'm a Bulbasaur fan, actually, believe it or not. Bulbasaur. Plus Venusaur with the red eyes from Pokemon Stadium to die for.
Let's go, yeah.
Yes. Yep, and then I really loved into Pokemon Puzzle League. That was actually one of my favorite games from the N64. Pokemon Snap was fun, but Pokemon Puzzle League was just addicting, and I really would love to see them kind of bring that back in an updated form. Not going to happen probably, but I can dream. So after that, of course, Gold, Silver, and Crystal came out. I played those for a little bit. I really don't have much memory of them, to be honest, compared to Red, Blue, and Yellow.
What?
I really don't. I don't know. I just didn't play them as heavily as Red, Blue, and Yellow because I was more interested in the N64 games and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I remember I would choose Chikorita. Chikorita is my favorite from that generation. Yeah, I'm a Chikorita fan, man.
I am sorry to hear that.
Hey, look. Now, we never had to worry about Whitney, though. So we had that going for us.
If we're talking about Gen 2, Chris, I do have to put on the public record. The first time I played Gen 2, I picked Cyndaquil. I got to the rival battle after Azalea Town and reset my save file and went to Totodile.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. So, all right.
Because Totodile kept beating me.
Common mistake. You know what you did wrong? You didn't follow the one rule of getting good. You just had to be better, and you wouldn't have had any problems. I didn't have any issues with. That's not true. I had a ton of issues, but I powered through.
Cyndaquil's dope, but
Cyndaquil's amazing.
At the time, especially on my other copy of Emerald, which I had just got Totodile as well, from completing the whole index, and I was like, for Alligator, we can see his rear end.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, that was the funniest thing to me. So I'm like, Totodile, let's play a game as Totodile.
What was also funny for me is his name, because that was before they extended the nickname to past 10. So they had to take out the O for alligator.
Yes, and I kind of like this how it's stylized now, and it just doesn't have it. It's nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's cool.
Wait, they didn't add the O, right? Or it's still
no, it's still for allocate.
Okay, I was making sure. I was like, wait, hold on. They didn't update
Get
the
her.
name.
Yeah.
Get her done.
Get her done. Right. So Chikorita was your favorite for Gen 2. Did you venture past Gen 2?
Yes, I kept going with the franchise. Now, before we leave Gen 2,
Okay.
I actually have still not beaten Red, believe it or not.
Red? You still haven't beaten Red? Oh, I'm on top of Mount Silver. Okay.
Yeah, I've never
Gotcha.
beaten it. I don't know. I've never been motivated to do so, but
that Pikachu's a ringer, man. You should not be laughing. That Pikachu will give you
level 81, man. It's a powerhouse.
So what's the team you remember bringing to face Red then, Chris, in your original playthroughs?
Ooh,
in our original playthroughs? Gosh, I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you, man. That was so long ago. I mean, Typhlosion, Lugia, Suicune. I know for
Ho-Oh?
sure those three. No.
Back in the day when you could get both legendaries in the same
Yeah.
game.
And like three other ones, I don't remember who in particular, but you know, probably a Caesar.
Oh, you had friends to trade with? Must be nice.
Yeah, growing up, I made it a point outside of Pokemon to have friends.
When I was playing through Gen 2, no one around me was playing Gen 2. They're like, oh, we're playing Emerald. And I'm like, I have Emerald, but I'm playing Gen 2 at the moment.
Oh.
So I could never finish those tags. He cries.
Well,
I think I had Dragonite from the Dratini you get at
Dragon's Den with extreme speed? Yeah.
The game corner.
Oh, okay. You were
like early on in the game.
You were rich.
No, I farmed the slots. Sorry, listeners in Germany, we've just made this episode rated R for 18 plus. Gamble responsibly. For those who are not in Australia, every gambling ad ends with just a person saying "gamble responsibly." Every ad.
Pretty sure we have something like, I think we have in the States there, or I guess maybe it depends on which state. But I know for sure I've heard ones where they have like ads for like, if you or somebody else you know has an issue with gambling addiction, then they give you like a helpline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they never imply that gambling is bad, just that it's those individuals' fault and we should get them help. And that's how they kind of swing it here, I think, which is bad.
Yeah. Because I know
great.
I know the beer ones, they have drink responsibly most of the time.
Yes. Yeah.
So Dragonite Lapras from the den in my brain just broke. It's Azalea
Dragon Town.
Dragon's Den.
You go into the Slowpoke Pokewell to get Lapras.
Oh, Azalea Town.
Yeah. Obviously for Alligator, Lugia Ho-Oh, because of course. My original playthrough of Crystal, I actually accidentally KO'd Suicune. So that was a thing. I ran out of balls. I didn't know what to do.
Hey David, after this episode, I'm going to need a new co-host. Are you available?
Let's go.
If it's your first time playing and you're like, oh, I seen online that, Gold, Silver, and Crystal, they all just run away from you. And Suicune did. I'm like, are you okay?
Yeah.
And
that's
eventually
right.
found him again and whoopsies.
Yeah, that one's caught in a bear trap. Different story.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't want to stay in the Pokeball, which is, arguably another form of bear trap. And then my favorite team member, which I think everyone should have if they're playing through Gen 2, a Heracross.
Oh, yeah. So it's a good coverage pick for sure. And also iconic.
The one thing I always loved doing, because I always owned all the games for each generation, I would do like a draft like for the first pick, I would pick the starter and then just try to get my favorite Pokemon from each generation. That was always kind of how I kept each game spicy for me.
That's a good way to do it. Yeah, because otherwise it's really easy to sort of just fall into a pattern of like, I know this worked last time, so I'll grab it again.
Mm-hmm.
So
and then I would play each game like in a best of 7 series to see which one would come out on top. It was so I would get so into it. Then I had the announcer voice. Like I really like dived into like letting my mind kind of play these games out like they're like life and death kind of things. They were.
Is that what all of those polls were last year for? All right, that makes more sense.
Yeah. Those polls are literally what I did as a kid a lot, actually, believe it or not.
I was trying to figure out, like, what are we voting for here?
So what I really like about what you just said, and we're not even there yet, we will get to it, but you have a flair for production, and you definitely have the chops for it. So I'm interested in digging into that, but we'll do it at the correct time. But it's cool to hear that sort of touch point early on in life. You were also thinking about, even if it was just for yourself, producing some sort of experience that is additive or supplemental to Pokemon stuff, you know?
To be honest, it's kind of cool to have a name. I just thought it was just playing imagination with my head, to be honest.
There you go. Hey, I mean, but that's where it starts, right? You know, performance is just imagining and then projecting that imagination, you know, from yourself to other people.
Well, is that what I was meant to be doing?
That's deep. I like it.
Yes. Yeah. Lachlan, yeah, they didn't teach you that in actor school.
See, I feel like I should have just did theater arts because I feel like I would have been perfect for it.
Yeah, probably. Or communicate. What'd you end up studying?
Oh, social work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that what you do?
Yeah, I'm a caseworker.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
That is really, really cool. Okay. Well,
that kind of helps me with my interviews, actually.
I'm sure. I mean, yeah, because you have to, it's not just like, hey, everybody I talk to wants to be here for this. Like, you have to go be able to have conversations with people that don't necessarily want to interact with you, right?
Mm-hmm. All the time. Yeah.
That takes a very special something. So, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't want to dig too much into that because we get very quickly into stuff you can't talk about. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, probably more stuff that's not appropriate for this podcast. Let's stick with that.
Sure.
More.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So Gen 2, so Red, what team were you trying to beat Red with there, David?
I've never faced Red.
You never got that high in Mount Silver?
No, I've gotten all 16 gyms, but I've never made that trek to go face Red. I've just never been motivated to do it.
Gotcha. I was under the impression that you just never beat the battle, but you had maybe attempted it, and you're like, you know what? I don't need this in my life. It's
no. I've never tried to face Red. I've never tried to make that trek to Mount Silver. Yeah, I've never tried to make it.
Yeah.
Did you go there just for the Larvitar and then dip?
I never caught a Larvitar, actually. I didn't catch a Larvitar until Pokemon GO.
Wow, nice. Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, I never had that much of affection for Tyranitar at all, so I just never cared to try to go for it, even in later games.
Yeah, my first game I ever really actually tried for Pokedex was Pokemon Go, and then as a result, Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, because Go had taught me how to do that or care about that. So I'm with you there. Like, I could live without that Pokemon. That's fine. I don't need Sneasel, actually. I don't.
Oh, I love Sneasel. Yeah.
I love Sneasel too, but it was so late in the game, I didn't have a reason to go get it. You know, like I just didn't. It was past that, you know. But okay, so Gen 2, done. Gen 3?
Love it. It's one of my favorite. It's I want to say it's my favorite. It's either Gen 3 or Gen 5. Gen 3 because I love the lore behind Gen 3. There's so much to it, especially with Groudon and Kyogre and a lot of the Team Magma and Team Aqua. Like, it's just a very dynamic, a very different type of area for Hoenn. Like, you've got the volcanoes, you've got the desert, you got the deserts, the rainforest, you've got you've got everything you could ever really want in a Pokemon game in those Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald.
And more trumpets.
What? Trumpets?
MIDI horns. Those games are plagued with MIDI horns.
Oh, okay. Shows how much I pay attention to the music. Although, I will say the one thing I hate about Gen 3, I hate Feebas in those games. Because you have to, for those who don't know, you have to go on every single tile just to find this little fish. And I spent literally months trying to just find one. So that's one Pokemon I never go catch in Ruby and Sapphire. I got one, I just breeded it with a Ditto. And I was like, I'm done with it. I don't ever want to try this again.
Yeah, that's it. I don't need to check these. I can shiny hunt with a Ditto if I need to.
And then they're like, in Diamond Pearl, they're like, hello, Feebas is in one square again. Good luck.
Yeah.
And then they had the worst thing with the trees, too.
But the benefit of Gen 4...
the honey on the trees.
Oh, the honey on the trees. Okay.
You had to actually wait physical time to do it.
Oh, no thanks. I don't think I even tried that.
The big benefit with Gen 4 in its... was the internet connectivity. Like, it was the first generation I completed the national decks, because Gen 3, I didn't have a GameCube, so I couldn't get, Ho-Oh or Lugia or some of the event exclusive stuff that you guys can occasionally access in the US. And so Gen 4 was when I first completed my national decks. And I still have that save file of Pokemon Pearl with 493 out of 493 on it. And it's never going anywhere.
That's so
good.
Sweet.
So that's a good pivot to Gen 4, David. So what are your thoughts on Gen 4?
So unfortunately with Gen 4, I started playing it. But I went to camp. Huh?
Oh,
Unfortunately.
jeez. Oh, God.
Unfortunately. So I went on a camp trip. And we were riding in those buses to where they have like the toilet in the back and whatnot. I don't know if
Yeah.
like the
Yeah,
long
like
ones.
a coach bus?
Yeah, coach bus.
Yeah.
So everybody was asleep. So I was like walking on like the not the rails, but the shoulder rest.
Mm-hmm.
And the bus, like I'm like on top of them, and I don't really have a way to grip myself. The bus makes a sudden stop, and I literally cartwheel, I guess, in the air, and my DS ends up on the ground, cracked. So I never, of course, at the time I didn't really have the money to get into the DS, so I never really got to experience Gen 4. So I went
Oh.
back to Gen 3 and played those games even more because there's still a lot of stuff to do, especially with when Emerald came out, or I think Emerald's already out. I'm sorry. Wait, yeah, Emerald's already out. I was doing the Battle Frontier and stuff like that. And then I delve even more with Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness. I love those games. I played those multiple times with Pokemon. I love the Shadow Pokemon aspect. Unfortunately, it's probably never going to come back to the main series, but I get to relive it a little bit and go.
Especially at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, certainly, especially at the moment. My goodness.
Yes. Now, please bring the Shadow Lugia from those games, and I'd be in heaven.
Yeah, and that, well, yeah, but then they'd have to do Mewtwo the same way too, right? Because that Shadow Mewtwo is nuts.
Oh, that's true, yeah. But I would care more about the Lugia.
Me too. The Shadow Lugia looks so cool. So cool.
It does. I wish they'd do more skins like that for other Pokemon. But...
Yeah, I do too. And when Apex was first announced, there was a glimmer of hope in my head that might have been what it looked like, but no, I guess not.
As I
opening
my Shadow Mewtwo amiibo card.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks cool.
Nice.
The first print run and only print run of Pokken Tournament on the Wii U.
Oh, dang.
Rest in peace from the competitive circuit. That game deserved better.
It did.
Yeah. But Gen 5. What about Gen 5?
So Gen 5, well, before we go Gen 5, we can't skip Heart Gold and Soul Silver though.
No, we can't. We can't. I'm just trying to get to Pokemon Go. But I agree. I mean, I would stop anything, even if my house is on fire, to talk about Heart Gold and Soul Silver, because Gen 2 is my favorite. So
we'll blend it with Gen 5 because we played both those games. Me and my friends. That's when I finally got a DS back, just because of Heart Gold Soul Silver.
Yeah.
My friend, he actually hosted tournaments, and that was my first experience of trying to do competitive Pokemon to a degree. It's when I did EV training. I didn't mess with IVs at all because I just didn't want to. But I did natures, and we would battle, and it was a lot of fun just to be able to kind of meet together and actually experience, I guess, the Pokemon games at the time as a friend, because Pokemon Go hadn't come out, obviously, and I never really had a chance to have that link and live experience with other Pokemon fans. So that always holds true dear to my heart.
So while we're in this brief pit stop, what was your favorite addition to the Johto formula that Heart Gold Soul Silver added?
Heart Gold Soul Silver, I loved how they fleshed out the area much more, especially for the Kanto side, because Kanto was very bare in the original games. I loved how they also added progression for the gym leaders to where you could rebattle them again in the dojo. And you could kind of see like what would, at Gold, Silver, Crystal, you always had to imagine like what would be their teams, right? If they had other Pokemon. Heart Gold Soul Silver introduced the idea of, this is what teams they would have had you face them at a higher level. And I love that aspect.
Yeah. And I mean, it's part of Pokemon lore, more or less. I mean, like if you look at like the Adventure series, right? The comics, the manga, rather, excuse me, pardon me. They like Brock, I think the first one was like, oh, you don't have any badges. Oh, I'll use these 2 Pokemon, implying that like if he had 8, he had other Pokemon ready for him, or sorry, 7 badges, I suppose. He would have had stronger, better, different Pokemon to use. And that was sort of the idea that I kind of operated under, because there's no way that a guy with an Onix that's like level 16 and a level 14 Geodude are going to be a gym leader in that world, right? Like,
yeah, and they gave you the idea of like he's kind of holding back a little bit, and that there are stronger Pokemon that he has, and that's what I loved about it. And that's even more with Black and White too. I'm sorry, Black and White and Black and White 2, to where it showed progression. It showed Black and White and Black and White 2 had a time skip, and it showed progression from the original games to even the follow-up game. Yeah. And I love that those series of games are probably my favorite time in Pokemon, to be honest. But I love that just for that reason, to where the games just progressed. I love the idea of things moving forward. Like even with Johto, Koga goes to Elite Four, Janine takes over the gym. Like those entire games just lived and breathed it. And that's why I loved it so much. And especially, I love Team Plasma. I like the idea behind.
They've got the
are
best
we
battle
using
theme
Pokemon
of
for-
any of the evil teams. That the MIDI
Yes.
electric guitar going.
And you go, yes.
Hey, Lachlan, weren't you worried about copyright earlier?
No, it's fine.
There's no lyrics for this one.
There was no MIDI horn. We're in the clear. It's fine. Yeah.
Like, it's by far the best evil team soundtrack, and I think they really perfected the format of the DS limitations when it came to Black and White, Black 2, White 2. Like, they were having those pseudo 3D spaces. Like, you'd go across the Driftvale Bridge, and you're like, and it cuts, and you're.
And that was also the introduction of animated sprites, more so, because before then I think they were just still sprites.
So
Most of the
in
time,
Crystal.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Crystal, Emerald, Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver. But they had more animations in Black and White. They had more variety. They were constantly moving, and they felt alive even in that 2D space. And there's something so special to that.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, you had the gym tournaments too in Black and White 2, to where you could face all the leaders and all the Elite Fours and all the trainers in a tournament royale, which was great
from all past generations. So
yes,
you could. Did you actually battle Red in that at least?
I don't remember, man. That was years ago.
Do you think you would have battled Red? Look, let's not talk about that. This game came out. 14 years ago.
Okay, all right. Anyway,
no, 14. That's not how math works.
What year did it come out?
Well, Black 2, White 2 was 2012, and Black and White was 2011.
Yeah,
and that's 12.
11,
so
12 years ago,
14 years ago.
Yeah, close enough. That's fine. Close enough. So Generation 6 and onwards, were they as exciting for you? I know you said before that your favorite generations were third and fifth.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's what's up with 6th, 7th, 8th, chopped liver, or just sort of like a different time of life, or what?
They were honestly my least favorites because I hated how they treated Fennekin, especially its final form Delphox. I really don't care for it.
Sure.
But mostly just due to Team Flare and the storyline. Team Flare made no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
they were fashionable. Fashion crimes.
If I wanted fashion, I would just dress myself up and go to cosplay. Like, I just didn't care for their mission at all. I mean, and then the Mega Mechanic lore-wise, like, I'm really big into Pokemon lore, to be honest. I like how the world makes sense. However, the Mega Mechanic never made any sense to me because it never explained, it tried to explain why some Pokemon got Mega Evolutions and some didn't, because the mystery of evolution, right?
Yeah.
Charizard and Mewtwo got 2 for some reason, but if you think of it outside, it's just a cash grab.
But
that kind of
Mewtwo were man-made Pokemon? Let's not think about it too much.
Exactly. And that's the part that doesn't make no sense to me. Like, it just didn't add up, and I never liked the Mega Mechanic at all. So I was very turned off on X and Y.
Now, listeners, if this is a fun challenge, because it's something I try and do annually just to keep my Pokemon brain going. How many of the Kalos gym leaders can you actually name without looking it up? Because I think people who watch the anime might remember one, but that's only because he was a traveling companion.
Mm-mm.
Nope.
Yeah.
Negative.
And that's my big issue with Gen 6 is I love it. I love it so much. I national dexed it like I have done since Pearl with all the games. I started breeding. I got my first shiny. That game was a Froakie through eggs. Mega Kangaskhan was so powerful in the VGC. It's why I stepped into VGC for the first time. But the gym leaders are just forgettable. Like, who remembers that Viola was the first gym leader, or that Grant was the second gym leader? Like,
I thought upright base was a lot more difficult than Viola.
Do I need to go downstairs and get my Viola? Like,
don't get your Viola. I won't recognize it anyway.
But like, that's the biggest issue with me is like, someone's like, "Oh, do you remember gym leader Wulfric?"
Yes, actually, I remember Wulfric.
But Wulfric? Like, who remembers Wulfric? Like Chris,
Nobody. I mean, not out of the air. Like you mentioned it, I'm like, oh yeah, sure. But
like if I said,
oh,
"What's the name of the psychic gym leader of Kalos?"
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No clue. No clue.
But like the gyms were beautiful, like the puzzles were beautiful, but for whatever reason, after Black and White, where the gym leaders showed back up at the end of the game, and the gym leaders in Black 2, White 2 were some of your friends from the last game and remixed, it just, they missed something with the gym leaders. They just sort of were there. And I don't know what they could have done differently. But that was, I think, their first misstep was the gym leaders just didn't do anything once you beat them.
Well, then it's also tough for me because I think about when that game came out. I'm an adult at that point. So I've tried to be fair as much as I can with Gen 6. And it just didn't fit with me. That's just the honest truth. Now, there's some generations that I did enjoy. Now, before we leave Gen 6, Aras's Bay. Love Omega Ruby. Love Alpha Sapphire. Love what they did with the games.
Oh, yeah.
But outside of that, I can leave Gen 6 alone. I really have never been motivated to care for them too much, unfortunately.
The Pokemon they added, though, now they're memorable. That's the saving grace of Gen 6.
Mm-hmm.
I love me a Ghost Sword.
Oh, yeah, Aegislash.
Yeah, Gen 6 has got some very memorable Pokemon designs, but I don't love them from those games. I love them in other games that came after.
Well, they only had three legendaries, right?
Plus 3 mythicals. But their mythicals didn't really play into the story of the game.
Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde. That's it. They didn't have any legendaries besides those three.
They had Mega Mewtwo in a cave at the end of the game.
Yeah.
No, the whole Zygarde thing really threw me off. Like that felt so alien, I suppose, for lack of a better word, but it just felt very out of touch from Pokemon. It was very strange because now looking back, Zygarde makes a lot of sense and feels a little bit better. Although I still maintain it would have made a much better Digimon. But like stuff like that in those games just didn't feel the same. Like the allure of the mystery of the unknown in Generation 2 was much more compelling to me than any of that Zygarde stuff was in Gen 6.
Well,
no, I agree. And
Zygarde was elaborated in Gen 7, which, it says a lot about where they were at as a company at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think they had much of a direct... I think they wanted to do something different with the Mega Mechanic, which I get. It just didn't fit with what Pokemon's always been about. But I understand why they were trying to branch out of something that was normal that they're used to.
I will say the cinematic at the end, when you finally battle the evil team leader, who, if you haven't played, I'm not going to spoil, I guess. And the...
Spoiler from 10 years ago, really, dude?
It's Pokemon fans. And just that cinematic sequence with the Yveltal or Xerneas is just beautiful as the beam shoots out of the ground. And my favorite plot point is the fact that one of the Elite Four members is a member of the evil team. And that was just like my favorite plot twist at the end of the game. They just show up and say, you beat our team. It's like a big memory for me is like the Fire Elite Four member was from Team Flare. So, yeah.
So eventually, Sun and Moon comes out, and I love those games, but then the follow-up games didn't really do much for me because I found out they were the same skin, and then that's when I took a break from Pokemon main series for a bit, because then Pokemon Go also came out around that same time. And at that point, we're talking 2016, 2017. 2016, Pokemon Go craze is going everywhere. I'm out with some friends at a park. People are, you've heard the stories, everybody was just playing Pokemon. It was so much fun to be able to walk and socialize, and I was looking for something to be more active and to be able to, make friends through Pokemon because I never really had that outside of that brief period with Gen 5 with the friends in college.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun. And then, 2017, me and Chris, we've talked about it to where I went to GOFest 2017 Chicago. If you know, it was a good experience. Hopefully it never repeats itself.
Good experience. Great experience.
But I love that Pokemon Go just really opened up some friendships that I never would have made, especially when raids came out, with the legendary raids. I met some people that we never would have crossed paths without it. And, of course, as the game has progressed over and over, and I've played Pokemon Go in so many different ways, it's always just fun to be able to connect with people just over Pokemon. Like, I'm a Pokemon nerd, if people haven't figured it out. I played nonstop. I've never taken any breaks. But that's why I love the franchise. And that's why I like to do that with my podcast. I like to talk more Pokemon. I like to be able to learn, why do y'all play Pokemon? Why do we play Pokemon Go? And that's the fun part that I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and I feel like you've actually transitioned to the next question for us, which was, with all this Pokemon in your rear view, and also I suppose in front of you, with the decision to make your podcast, what was your motivation there? And you already started to share a little bit about, like, getting to know other people, what their story is, because your story is, important to you. So their story must also be important, and why wouldn't you want to hear it, right? So beyond that, though, like, can you kind of just walk us through or talk us through, as the Pokeball Turns, what it is, what it started as, and what it is now?
So as the Pokeball Turns, I've always wanted to create content. The big problem was video content is king, and I acknowledge that, but it's very competitive. And I was a bit older. I don't have as much time to really try to learn and dabble into things. So it would take me, for example, when I tried to make a YouTube video for Pokemon, it took me 3 weeks to make a 4-minute video. And anybody who does any type of YouTube is like, what the heck are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
But that was the hard part, because I really always wanted to create something. Pokemon Story is actually a little bit of fun fact. It was actually supposed to be, originally I was going to write Pokemon fanfics, and I was going to try to somehow apply that to YouTube. Never could really figure that out. Plus, I just didn't have the passion for it, so that kind of died out. And then I did Pokemon plushies. I collected Pokemon plushies for a bit, and I would try to take photos out in the real world with them, where they would be at, kind of thing.
Oh, that's fun.
It was a lot of fun, but it's also weird being a 20 to 30-year-old man with plushies trying to take photos. So
it's only weird if you say it's weird.
It was weird for me, so I never felt comfortable doing it. So that died out pretty fast, and I just was stuck. I didn't really have a creative outlet. And it was during the pandemic, I found a podcaster called Strong Opinion Sports by Zach Shalmer. And I loved how his takes were, to where he was very honest about sports and about like what he was analyzing. He would admit he was wrong, which was like revolutionary. It's like, whoa, this guy's admitting he's wrong. I mean, because if you watch the Main Street stuff, you don't see that at all. But for him to be as honest as he was, I always enjoyed watching it. Now, at the time, I didn't know I was watching a podcast. I just was watching a YouTube video. And eventually, it's like I found out he's a podcast. And I'm like, I can do that. Like, for the first time, I felt like I saw what he was doing. And I'm like, I can do that a little bit. And it became the question, is like, what does it take to make a podcast? And I started diving into it, watched some videos, and I was like, I can do this stuff, because I was familiar with Audacity a little bit. So I was like, okay, I can edit. I can actually edit audio compared to video. It's a lot more easier.
Yeah.
So of course the big question comes, like, well, what kind of podcast do I want to make? And the biggest suggestion that every podcast thing, if you ever look into it, is make something you're passionate about. So I listed some things that I was passionate about. Pokemon was being one of them. And that's kind of how it started fleshing out a little bit, to where I was going to do Pokemon. And I was like, I'm going to do Pokemon Go, because I'm still playing it pretty heavily. I played this game a lot. Now, what can I do about Pokemon Go? And then that's where the idea came about, to where I wanted to do an interview show, because I noticed when I was looking around the different podcasts, there was 2 problems. One, you have to have a platform if you want to share your story. And there wasn't really a place for people who aren't content creators, who have given their time and their dedication within building up Pokemon Go, to share their story. There wasn't, at least from what I could see. And the other part was, the game was at that point 5-6 years old. There was the other problem, to where you think about the older content creators, Trainer Tips, Mystic 7, those people. How, if you were to ask a question like, what's their origin story? Like, how did they get to where they are now? Could you really answer that if somebody new was coming in? And I was like, there's potentially an opportunity to be able to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted my podcast to be about people, because I felt that it was needed, and it was something that I felt like you could do in so many different ways. Because I think about my journey with Pokemon Go, and it's so different compared to what other people have experienced. And that's kind of how the idea started. Now, unfortunately, my podcast didn't start that way. Unfortunately, I didn't have a mic presence. I wasn't comfortable being recorded. And that's when I started like, okay, I need to kind of get used to the mic. So I did a news podcast for a bit. That's when I started covering the news, kind of what you see with GOCast, you see with Alert Up, everywhere else. I did it my own way. Now, the hard part was, I'm one man. I'm only one person.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most striking things about your show. I mean, besides the fact that you're highlighting people that more often than not are, missing as far as representation is concerned on other platforms. It's not like you don't have content creators on. Like, I've been on, Lachlan's been on. Actually, I'm pretty sure everybody on the GOCast team everybody has been
Yes.
has been through your show. But you also highlight trainers that are like notable community leaders that don't necessarily make content, but have existed in the space for a really long time. And like, that is something that just doesn't happen with the other shows. And like you said, you are a one-man show, even though, you have guests on all the time. But like to me, one of the more motivating things to like keep going is knowing that I have somebody else that like wants to do it. And if I'm like, I'm not feeling this week, like that person will be disappointed. Kyle likes to record. I'm assuming Lachlan likes to record.
Sometimes.
I think he would have stayed in retirement, Like,
Look,
but
I like my casual. Like, instead of full time, I'm liking this casual. Like, I'm just on the side.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. It's just kind of remarkable to me. I think like this because you don't miss weeks, and you've been at this for well over a year. Gosh, a year and a half yet, or no?
No, it's just been a year and 2 months.
Year and 2 months. Yeah.
We have rotated.
We have rotated. Yeah. I think that the level of dedication and motivation that you must have in order to keep that going is really admirable, considering you are one guy.
Yeah, a lot of it didn't happen overnight. I had imposter syndrome pretty badly early on.
Oh yeah.
And I was trying to do too much early on. I tried to do 3 episodes a week, I think. And that was way too much. And then eventually I just kind of struggled trying to be comfortable being a podcast host. I took a bit of a break for a couple months. And then I think it was around GoFest, actually. Because I think that's when I met you and Lachlan. I met Lachlan in Seattle, right? Yeah.
Yes.
It was Seattle.
Yes.
To where
I went to America for Seattle.
Yeah.
That is something I did.
But it was that experience in Seattle to where I didn't want to play the game. Like, I didn't want to play Pokemon Go. I wanted to just experience it. I didn't want to look at my screen because that was the first GoFest we had in 2 years because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me. I was like, there's people here who are having stories. This is their first time. And where can they go to say it? And then that's when I doubled down on the Trainer's Eye segment. Because at the time, I hadn't done it. And I was like, I need to have a guest. I need to start doing this. I need to do it now.
And I think that's what a lot of people who haven't been to a GoFest don't quite understand. Like, you're flying all this way and you're not playing hardcore the whole time. But once you're physically there and you're talking to people and you're interacting with people and you're seeing these groups of people walking around, having a good old time, sharing their stories, that's when you understand this game is so much more than actually playing the game. It's like tennis. Like, you're going to play some tennis, but you're going to have a chat with your doubles partner. You're going to sit down afterwards and have a couple rounds of water. And do you like that, Americans? Water. Is that nice? Is that triggering to anyone in the listening end?
Water.
So you'll have your water.
Whataburger.
Not sponsored. But you'll have those experiences, and you genuinely don't know that that's going to happen until you get there. You start off hardcore, but you look up from your phone and you just have a chat with someone. Because maybe the special research will say trade with a Pokemon. So you find someone to trade a Pokemon with or make a new friend. Yeah. And then in Seattle, especially, they had those raid tours where content creators were leading the charge around these amazing hills.
Oh, God. Those hills, man.
The hills were alive.
Those hills had eyes, and it was mine on the ground.
Oh my gosh! I would be okay if I love Seattle. I want to go back, but I never want to have to do that amount of walking on those hills ever again.
Ugh. So, but those experiences you genuinely don't understand until your boots on the ground. I had people when I got back to Australia saying, "You only got this many shinies, but that's like a community day for you." And I'm like, "Yeah." I stopped playing for a bit. And I looked up and took in my surroundings, and that's something which I really hope people take away from this, because I know people, like, we had cricket on our first episode, people will say, oh, well, she goes to all of these events but catches 4 shinies. And I'm like, but if you see her at these events, she is the life of the party. You want to be around cricket. And that's the sort of atmosphere that we need from these live events. And that's what, by bringing attention, having these conversations with these community members, you can really highlight that this game is not just about the hardcore grinding of it.
Yeah, I think it's easy to kind of get lost in that. And that's kind of the part that I love to highlight. I like to highlight the experiences. I like to highlight the communities and what they do. And it was just that experience would led me to try to find who I wanted on the show. And I started with my local group. I started with the people who are leaders who I thought like had a good story. And that's how I've done my guests so far. Like I don't pick guests based on followers or how much views they get. Cause I mean, it has a place. I'll admit that it has its place, but I don't want that to be the main drive of why I have a guest on the show. That's just never been me. Like I have more fun highlighting a guest who you may never hear about again. Like I enjoy that. Like for example, my recent episode, the guy overcome drug addiction with Pokemon GO. How could I not want to highlight that? How could I? Where could he go? And I get to highlight that story on my own platform. And that's what I take more pride in. Is like as much as I love to have the big guest on. Don't get me wrong, I love to have you on
For sure. Yeah.
Well,
I
I'm
like
not
to
a
be
big
able to.
guest, so
You
it's
are
fine.
a big guest, Lachlan. You are
I'm
a
just
podcast
tall. That's all
You're
I am.
taller
I'm
than
tall.
I am. Yeah.
Maybe big guest is the wrong word. It's more of the ones who don't have a platform because we have a platform. We could share stuff and people would listen.
Yeah.
But other people, if they don't have content creation, they don't have a place to go to. And I wanted to be that spot for As the Pokeball Turns. And that's what drives me to do what I do because I get to release an episode every single week about Pokemon, primarily Pokemon Go, but we talk about Pokemon too. And that's so much fun because each episode's different. I don't know what to expect from every guest. And that's what I enjoy. I get so much joy out of it. Like, I don't feel like I'm really doing work. That's why I keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, editing is quite a bit of work.
But I get to relive the conversation actually, because I don't remember a lot of the stuff that gets said when we record. I don't.
Yeah.
I relive it when I edit it, and I'm like, oh, I remember this part. I remember when he said this, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna get to the good part. I get to listen to it. So,
Can I ask you? And this is possibly an embarrassing question. It is for any podcaster. But
Sure.
when you re-listen to yourself telling a joke, do you laugh again at your own joke? Because I'm super guilty of that.
Depends on the joke. Some I do. I'm like, some's like, why did I say that? So
Why
it
did I
depends.
say that?
And then sometimes the worst one is like, I wish I had said this instead. You know,
Sure.
Let
yeah.
me just jump in a
Slippery
different
slope.
conversation. Haha! I've solved it. Now, speaking of your ability to dub and bring in your content from your larger and your smaller guests, you like to do these little skits. And they can be as simple as this week on PvP Corner.
I'm trying to figure it out. Wait, what?
Like,
I thought I didn't. Yeah, didn't you have your
PvP
dogs right?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
subbing in for
Yeah.
Efficiency 5.
Somebody for efficiency.
And it was just
exactly.
barking. And it is... it's just not what you'd expect. So, like, where does this skits and the random segments you add in are sort of not filler because you take a lot out of the original conversations and keep the good stuff, but
Right.
what are you bringing when you're bringing this extra content in, and where do those ideas come from? Where's that humor base from?
They come from 3 o'clock in the morning wondering why I'm not going to go to sleep at night.
My man, that's right.
But honestly, so my dogs, they're kind of my family. I'll be honest. Dukes is sleeping behind. For those who are on video, you'll see Duke sleeping.
Hey, dudes.
I always say he's in charge of making sure we get walked, and Layla is in charge of making sure we get fed. Or I'm sorry, the other way around. Dukes is making sure we get fed. Layla makes sure we gets walked. Because otherwise I'd be in my room the entire time.
Uh-huh.
But for the GOCast, that episode specifically, I was a big fan of Epic Rap Battles of History growing up.
Oh, sure.
And Nice Peter did an interview talking about how he would research the characters that they would do for the rap battles. And he always says he had 3 levels, I think. He had the ones where everybody would get it. He had the ones for those who, one for everybody would get it, and ones who were really big fans of those characters will only understand. And I wanted that for my own podcast because, especially, this is more for the ones who have a platform. So, for example, GOCast, Lured Up, they're probably the big ones I've done this for. Even Whalelords to a degree, actually. For GOCast, what's GOCast without PvP Corner? What's their story without it?
Embarrassing. If somebody ever asked a PvP question.
Right, but that was the thing, though. It's like, I wanted to be able to include that when I had you and Kyle on, because some of your fans are going to listen to the episode. They're going to know about PvP Corner. What's an episode without somehow including that? And I thought of ideas like, what if we include a PvP Corner? I was this close to actually doing DeFi's and Fish's. Yeah, I did actually use their voice. And I think I did it for the teaser. I can't remember. And I was like, I want to include that because I know the people who are diehard fans for GOCast, they'll understand that. Mm-hmm. And I would hope they would appreciate that.
Yep.
Now, of course, I couldn't have DeFi and Fish on the heater because I wanted to keep it a surprise. So when I need to do that, that's when I include my dogs. And that's why I included. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, Fish and the heater and DeFi can't be here. But today I have Dukes and Layla. Dukes and Layla, say hello. And then I would include the sound clip for them.
Mm-hmm.
So in the way, they're kind of also part of the podcast. I did the same thing for Lured Up, actually. Because Lured Up, I did a skit to where I had already recorded all the other podcasts. I did Way Spotters. I did Purified. I did Special Conditions with Adam. And I know at the time Justin wasn't there. And I wanted to acknowledge that. So I had to point to where, if that episode, if you listen to it, I had the guy twisting the radio. And I did the intro songs.
Yes.
For every single podcast that had been on the Pokemon Professor Network up to Lured Up. And then I think that's when if I remember correctly, I did a kind of interlude. I copied Ken. I tried to copy Ken's voice. He talks fast. I could not keep up.
Yeah, he did. Well,
well, he's from
Jersey.
That's Jersey, yes. So I had to modify it to where I'm saying it and me coming in and out. And again, that's another part that people only who are big fans of maybe Lured Up or the Pokemon Professor Network would only understand, because again, it's just adding the small details that hopefully the people who do listen appreciate. And that's what I try to do whenever I have the big guests. Not always successful, but I do try to keep that in mind.
I think I messaged you after listening to your sequel to the raid bus. And after listening to the sequel episode, my brain simply just started singing, "The raids on the bus go down,
go
and down, down and down. The raids on the bus go down and down all the way home." Mm-hmm. And then for the next hour, my brain was just going through how else can I make bus-related puns and raiding. And I just started sending you lyrics way after the fact. But that's what I love about your brain, is that you understood what I was doing and you understood why you were getting it.
Yes. And that was the one thing. So I used to do skits as well. Like I only do them for special occasions at this point because they're a lot of time to produce.
Sure.
So eventually I just did I try to connect each episode to certain guests. So for example, I think for Chris and Kyle, I connected DeFi and Fish on the Heater because they were on the episode, or they were on the podcast way back when. And it also addressed the issue that I found that I knew was going to happen, is that eventually I'm going to get to the point to where I'm going to have so many guests that people are going to forget that I've had them on. And that's kind of how I remind us, like, hey, I've had these guys on if you haven't heard it before.
Mm-hmm. That's what
I try to do
the
now.
ad plugs for past episodes, which I love. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you enjoyed this, here's a related episode.
It's really, really smart, because another really important selling point of your show is that because it's not based in news to begin with, your show is 99% evergreen content. So you can go back 2, 3, 4 years later and it'll still be a fun listen, and more often than not fully relevant, you know, and up to date. And so that's really cool. You have definitely a step up, a leg up in that scenario compared to the rest of the shows that cover news primarily.
Rest in peace, the Sylph Road.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing, was that's actually how my interviews have changed over time. Because in my opinion, if you listen to actually Lachlan and Chris's episode, they're entirely different, because I've learned how to. Before, I was very hesitant to include a lot of the Pokemon stuff for Lachlan, because Lachlan's a huge Pokemon fan. But if you listen to it, we didn't really dive into as much Pokemon as
So
I normally do.
if we ever have to do a second rotation with Lachlan, it can just be 2 hours of Pokemon.
Do a 3-hour episode and have both of us on at the same time.
There we go. There we go.
No, 3
'Cause
hours.
we can
6
talk.
hours.
Yeah. And that's what I always tell my guests. Like I told y'all both, like I talk as much as you want. I tell all my guests, don't worry about talking too much. Talk as much as you want. I'll edit it out. So don't worry about it. And I tell that to every guest. I'm like, hey, talk as much as you want. This is your show's about you. Let's highlight who you are.
That's a good move, but I gotta say, and I know Lachlan's in the room, you gotta defend yourself sometimes. You gotta be cautious who you tell that to.
Ooh, Pokemon Emerald. Nice.
Leaf green.
Lachlan's doing a little bit of show and tell with some classic Pokemon
For the video
games on the
listeners.
video for the video viewers.
Actually,
right
real
now.
quick. So this Pichu actually, I
Okay.
have.
Yes.
So when I was doing my solo show before I did interviews, I had to figure out how to talk, right? Because I like to joke around, and it's hard to joke around when you don't have a feedback. So I used to talk to this Pichu all the time. For those who have heard, so I would always talk to this Pichu and talk to the news, say the news to it. So that would give me over this whole mic thing.
Yeah, it is definitely like an acquired like skill, like mindset. And you're like, oh, who are you talking to? And even when you have somebody else to like bounce off of, like you are talking to a third party that is not there, you know? So like when Kyle and I present news on the show, like sometimes we have to like explain things that we both know, and that's just part of the flow, right? And so I think that's brilliant. Like, so you have had a co-host this whole time. They've just been a silent co-host.
He's been a silent co-host, yeah. And then Dukes was my interview specimen while I was trying to get better at trying to ask good questions.
There you go.
He was my practice buddy.
Wonderful. Okay, so you had a sort of like a slogan, sort of like tagline for a while, which was 52 guests over 52 weeks.
Yes, 52 weeks, 52 guests.
Yes, sorry, I had that backwards, but that's the idea. And that idea has come to its completion?
No.
How close are you?
At the end of the year, I'll be at it. So 52, I guess you're not the first one to tell me that. I've had other people tell me. So 52 weeks, 52 guests was two things. One, how the hell am I going to find 52 people to come on this podcast? Because it was a concern for me because I'm not an established brand like you or Lured Up or Incensed. I'm not a content creator like, think of Trainer Tips, Cricket, and other people. And it was hard for me to really fathom that people would come on the show because I'm kind of unproven. Like,
okay.
And then I was worried, like, what if I get to a point to where I don't have a guest on? And that always concerned me a little bit because this doesn't stop. And that was part of it. Like, I'm gonna commit to my audience. Whoever decides to listen to the podcast, I'm gonna at least find 52 people. Even if I have to get my dog to interview an episode. That's how.
There you go. Yeah, I think people would be there for that. Absolutely.
That would have been a good April Fool's episode.
Yeah.
If it falls on Wednesday, yeah. But that was kind of the idea behind it. Is like, okay, I can do 52 people. Let me get through this because I hadn't been consistent before because I took the break. The other part was I can only interview 52 people. That's not a lot. And that's why I'm hesitant to have repeat guests because it takes a spot away that could potentially go to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the double entendre is. It's like 52 people I got to find, but 52 people, I only have to find 52 people. That's a lot. That's not a lot of people in the grand scheme of things.
So April 1st, 2026 is a Wednesday. Look forward to As the Pokeball Turns.
There you go. I'll interview Dukes on April 1st, 2026. There we go.
But by 2026, we'll have an answer to my next question, which is after the 52 guests and I guess the 52 weeks at the same time, because that's how it works. What's going on there? Do you have an idea now? Because it's no longer a far-flung situation. This is on the horizon. You can probably see it coming, right? Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to pivot? Are you going to do something else? You're going to renew it for 52 more people and allow yourself repeats? What's going on in your head about this?
So it hit me once I can't remember when. I think it was, I hit a recorder point and I've made a tweet about it. It's like, I only have 10 more guests to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm almost done with this. It hit me at that point. Like, oh, wow. And the interviews are still going to go. I'm not going to stop the interviews. I love what I do. I cannot not do interviews because there's too many people left to highlight. There's too many stories left unheard. There's some that I still want to interview people. Like, there's too much. Like, I enjoy what I do. That's not going away. The big thing that's probably going to come to the podcast, I'm going to incorporate YouTube somehow. That's going to be the biggest challenge for me moving forward.
Exclusive to the Star Piece podcast. As the Pokeball Turns is going to YouTube.
Breaking news.
Well, no, that's the other thing is that, again, going back to, I want to be able to highlight the people who don't have a platform. I'm determined to have video for even the episodes that have already happened. So that's why I can't do what you guys do, because I want to make sure that it's standard for every episode I've done so far.
So you're going to go back and retroactively add video versions of the shows?
It's evergreen content, baby. Why not?
I mean, yeah, no, you're right. Especially from a marketing perspective, that's very, very right.
But then also, again,
Lachlan's currently panicked about having an AI duplicate of himself being made by David Hernandez.
It's just going to be your me.
But that's been the biggest challenge for me because, I mean, I do shorts on YouTube. I do pretty well on those. But if I want to do the full interviews, it's all or nothing for me. Like, I'm going to do every episode or I'm going to do any of them at all. So that's my resolve for that. Outside of that, one other thing that I'm going to do is I used to do a thing, maybe Lachlan knows, I don't know how dedicated he was to my old podcast. I used to do a thing called Dex Entries to where I would go over the community day Pokemon. And it fit the idea the same way. It's an interview. It's like, well, what's the story behind, what's community day Pokemon coming up? It's, no, we just had Timber. So for Timber, I was like, I used to do like a deep dive on trying to understand the social aspects of how they grew up to, how they kind of interacted within their area and how they came to kind of be. So for the two I did, I think I did Starly and Hydreigon, and I loved that. And so I plan on trying to bring that back in both video and audio for sure for that. So that's something I'm for sure looking into for the following year.
I have a lot of respect for that because we started moving to video when we were well into our 200s, and I just will not do that.
No.
Nothing doing.
Well, see, that's why I need to do it next year, because if I don't do it next year, I'm not going to do it the year after. So.
You'll quickly find yourself in the same position. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
listeners, look out for episode 1 remastered GOCast podcast.
I don't want to go back to some of those old episodes. That's okay. Once a year, I make myself spin up episode 1 just to remind myself where we came from. And every year I'm like, I'm not going to do this next year.
But you've got new episode 1s now. You can go back to episode 1 of the PvP corner.
That's true.
Chris, I had to do that for my anniversary episode last year. I went back and listened to it. It was painful.
Oh, yeah. It's awful, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. No, I had the benefit of podcasting prior to GOCast, but I remember listening back to my first ever podcast ever. And it pain in 2010. Chris didn't know what he was doing.
Chris, you want to guess how long my first episode was?
26 minutes.
5 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. That's manageable. You said you couldn't do that 3 times a week. What are you doing, David?
That's how uncomfortable I was doing the
Today podcast, in Pokemon Go, there is a spotlight hour. Goodbye. And just release the same thing every Tuesday.
I feel like that's just for a further testament to you pushing through it and having such a polished, edited, well put together show every single week now, and that people want to come on when you invite them. They're not like, no. Like I was excited. I was really excited when you asked, mostly because I saw everybody else getting asked. I'm like, when's this gonna happen? Like,
and that's the crazy part. So I feel weird when people say, "Oh, listen to your podcast. I'm glad you finally invited me on." I'm like, "Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you listened." But this is kind of, I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah, what's weird is what's weird is that despite the goal of trying to highlight people that don't have a platform, I think your podcast, as well as appealing to general audience, really appeals to people that have platforms, because the people behind the scenes in our world are those unsung heroes that you highlight. And so I loved hearing about several of the people that, like, I know their names and I don't know enough about them because I haven't got a chance to work with them or talk with them for longer than just like a few DMs back and forth on Discord or a introduction at a live event. And everybody has, like we said from the beginning, or you were really saying from the beginning, everybody has a unique story that's worth telling. And so it's almost ironic that it kind of comes back full circle that myself as a content creator especially am interested in that, you know?
And that's why we really wanted to ask you for your story, because the one person you can't easily interview is yourself.
True.
Sounds accepted.
No, it's true. And, I got to say this, and you're going to be really uncomfortable when I say this, but you're really humble. And like when we met in New York,
New York.
All right. So David had me on. David had me on his podcast, and we didn't use video, so I didn't know what David looked like. All right. I'm in that park for no longer than an hour, and David and I cross paths. It was really quick, actually. It was kind of like out the gate. We sort of ran into each other, if I recall.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were like, hey, I'm David. I'm a big fan of your podcast. I'm like, oh, hey, that's really cool. Really nice to meet you. Thanks for listening, etc. And then we just sort of like carried on. I think we walked together for a little while. And then it wasn't until like much later that
I got your autograph.
Yeah. I connected the dots. I'm like, oh my God, that's David from As the Pokeball Turns. And I like messaged you. I was mad. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? How could you come up to me and be like, I'm a big fan of your show when we are podcast blood? We're family as far as I'm concerned. And I felt so bad. I was so embarrassed.
You just need to wear a shirt, David, with your face on it, and it says what podcast you're from.
That's right.
It helps with all of those awkwardness. I can recommend.
Right.
I know a guy who knows how to do it. I can give you his number.
Oh my gosh.
But I just want to point that out because you're very passionate about this work. You've done a lot of work on your presentation skills, your comfort level, all these things. And then when it comes time to very easily, somebody who would be an easy person to be like, yeah, absolutely, that's right, we are podcast buddies and that sort of stuff, that level of recognition, you don't even want that. It wasn't even a big deal for you. You're like, yeah, whatever, I don't really care. That's so rare, and I love it, and I think you're great for it. So sorry if I made you uncomfortable calling you great, but
I just had no response, really.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I just wanted to highlight that. And next time I won't make that mistake again, obviously.
Well, I might.
Oh, there we go. You won't have a good excuse. You've had video.
You've seen me before, too.
Yeah, it'll just be in Hawaii, and I'll be like in full Hawaiian tropical relax mode. I'm like, hello.
Oh, my gosh.
You here for the PvP?
What you got to do, you got to go up to David and be like, hey, I'm a big fan of your podcast. And then just walk away.
Well, Chris, that's the fun part, is that nobody's seen my face, actually.
Yeah.
I wasn't, Lachlan knows what I look like, and some of the people from Pokemon Professor Network knew. But most people had never seen me because I always did no video recordings.
Yeah.
So I did that to everybody. And then
did you have anybody else react similarly to that? Where I was like, dude, what? I'm sorry. Hey, how's it going?
I can't remember. I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Well, New York was a lot.
I saw a lot of people that day.
Yeah,
or those couple days.
That was a ton.
New York was insane. It was like
it was
the craziest experience I've had this year. I was just lying in bed and I get a call from a table, and everyone's like, "It's Lachlan. Put him on speaker." And I'm like, "I'm in New York, guys. What are you doing today, Lachlan?" I've just got out of bed.
Who called you?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
It's that elite kind of number, the ones you got on speed dials. Oh, yeah. He's on my number.
It was John Hankey. He just doesn't want to say it.
Look, Mr. Hankey.
If he's Sean Hankey, get him on my podcast.
Okay, you got it.
Mr. Hankey and I, we go back.
Oh,
a whole negative amount of time.
But you do go back. There is something there in that equation.
Yes.
Zero is an answer. You can solve for zero. That's fine. Yeah.
Now, David, we've got a very important question to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Chris and I are giving you the keys to Creatures Inc., where they create the new Pokemon. And you get to go in there for a day and make your dream come true. Whether it be a regional variant, a new evolution, or a new type of Pokemon, or a new evolution line. What is your demand on your one day of work at Creatures Inc.?
Delete all fire types.
Yo!
No.
Yo!
They can't do that. We're adding to the kingdom. We're adding to the kingdom.
I was just joking.
We're going to introduce the firefighter type, where it's just only super effective to fire type Pokemon, and it's immune to fire.
Oh, fire's not even my favorite type, and that hurt, man. Oh my gosh.
So for me, I want a robot Eevee, which would be the steel type.
So a Paradox Eevee or an evolution of Eevee?
No, evolution. I just want it to be a robot though, because I feel like that'd be kind of a good steel type.
What about the name?
Robotion.
Oh, I'm not that creative. Robotion, yeah. That's
I thought Guardian was like a really good one.
Cyphron or like Cyber, Cyberion, Cyberon,
Siberian.
Siberium, I think, is taken.
Like Siberia. Siberia is taken. You're right.
So you know where I did, Chris? I know you're a Digimon fan.
Yeah.
You remember Metal Garurumon, Metal Greymon?
Yeah.
I want something like that as a skin. Like I would want that kind of item, to be honest, to where like you give this item to a Pokemon and it gains a steel type.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets like a whole steel metal coat. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Only if it gets to shoot rockets out of its pectoral muscles.
Yes.
Like Metal War Greymon. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, just Metal Greymon.
And then its claws too, right? Because its claws would project too, right?
Yeah, one of his arms was a robotic arm, and he could shoot his hand at people. Yeah, or flip it back, and there's a gun. One of those two. It was a weapon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm stuck for names of potential robotic Eevees.
I mean, honestly, for steel type Eevees, which I'm assuming would be the type here, like the best I've seen online has been Guardian, because it's very close to Guardian and it's a tanky type. I thought that was really, really cool. Steelion is too on the nose, but it doesn't sound bad and it feels nice to say.
Glaceon.
It's Glaceon is
on.
You leave Leafeon alone. I love that evolution.
Barbion.
Oh my gosh.
Barbion.
Right, so a steel type Eevee, that is good. I mean, honestly, I feel like you're doing the Lord's work for a lot of people here, because people really want those missing evolutions. So thank you for sacrificing.
I don't care about any other ones. I just want the steel one. That's it. Other ones, forget about them.
I'm just saying, you're still doing a public service. So at the end of each of these, actually, Lachlan, why don't you go ahead? I've done a lot of talking, please.
Now, we do have this thing where you like to ask questions, David. We know that. So
I do like
our
questions.
first guest, Cricket, had this brilliant idea where our guest gets to ask a question to Chris or I. Now, or both of us. And it can be as unrelated as you want. So, David, what is it you've always wanted to know?
What's your credit card information?
Oh, crud. Let me hang on. On a technicality.
All right. So my actual question. If you're going to end the world with 6 Pokemon, which 6 would you pick?
Can I go first?
Please do. I got to think about that. You said end the world, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yveltal?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Ditto? Gigantamax Ditto. Not just any Ditto.
Okay.
So it could be...
He's tall.
It could be... Or it could be...
Tall.
So that's Gen 1, Gen 6. From Gen 7, I think we need to bring in everyone's favorite Pokemon, Cosmoan. Have you seen how heavy Cosmoan is? Just drop that on cities.
Very heavy.
Just use a Bombardier to drop the Cosmoans on cities.
So do you need the Bombardier then?
Yeah.
Wait, could it carry it though?
It's a psychic type. It can levitate itself. It just needs support in the airways. I think Bombardier is an excellent choice because it can just fly around causing havoc regardless.
Noise.
I think we're going to get a Paradox Pokemon in there, so Fluttermane. And because I am a sucker for something that's really fun and exciting, I think we need to see, just marching around the world as leader of this team of Pokemon. Are you ready for this?
Hit us.
Yeah.
Tynamo.
You've lost me. I can safely say you've lost me, Lachlan. What? How
Well,
does Tynamo
just flutters around and just whispers in the ears of people, and it's like, But Dynamo can disrupt the electrical grid of the world.
Oh, it's like the influential voices of the corrupt ancient old gods beneath the Earth's surface.
But it doesn't
is
through
your
electricity.
Dynamo.
So it just jumps
like
out
our
of
cell
the power
phones.
outlets.
Okay. You know what? I really respect that. That's good. That's good. Jeez. Okay. For myself, Dynamax Eternatus, and I think that's it. No, I'm just kidding. That would be an acceptable answer, though. But Eternatus, I'm going to stay away from special forms. Eternatus for sure. I think I would also like to take Darkrai, Giratina.
No, well, Giratina, you don't need the forms. He can
just Giratina.
He can hold that Grizziosorb, or he can just drop it somewhere.
Yeah, that's my job. That's my job as the referee, the coach, the handler, whatever. And then I
currently
think
got
that's
that lucky
3.
egg going.
That's 3, right? Yeah, that's 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beyond that, oh gee, this is where it starts getting hard because, like, I guess Arceus is an easy answer, but it almost feels like a cop out at this point.
I don't
know?
think he would want to destroy though. He would just want to pass judgment.
Oh, but Arceus doesn't have a say in it. I'm the Pokemon trainer.
Yeah,
He fell into the Master Ball. Not my fault. God fell into the Master Ball.
Tripped, fell into my Master Ball. Exactly right. Exactly right. Geez, this is a hard question, especially going second. Kyogre and Groudon for my last 2. Yep. To get whatever sort of balance of those sorts of like fundamental elements that I need in there too. We've got we've got Giratina for the Shadow Realm stuff, so that's cool. I think I'm covered. I think I have my base covered. My one weakness is I didn't fit Dynamo in, but I think I'll manage.
Well, I would have accepted Rotom.
Yeah. Rotom is cool. Rotom is just going to be my cell phone at that point in time.
Or Smeargle. It just sketches. Just sketches judgment. I will also pass judgment on you. Dark Void.
He writes the end is near.
It's a Smeargle who found the Death Note. It just can't be stopped.
delete. Somebody needs to make a comic of that, though. That'd be kind of cool to see, actually.
Oh my
Smeargle writing
gosh.
Death Note.
I also
like the crossover we didn't know we needed.
Everyone's favorite Pokemon Missing No. Just glitches out reality.
No, I mean true.
Yeah.
I mean true though. Yeah, that's the hallucinative Pokemon that everybody sees. It's like the man with the hat that everybody sees in their night terrors. That's Missing No, but in the Pokemon universe.
And David, do you have an answer for this? Because this is a really good question.
It is.
Yeah, so I would do Groudon and Kyogre for sure. Those 2. I would like to do Slugma because of its heat. Yeah, its heat can actually burn through the ground.
Just
if it
slides around.
Yeah.
Honestly, it could. It really could.
It really could. Because if you read the Pokédex entries, it's pretty...
It's insane.
Yeah. Another fun one would be Shedinja. Have somebody just carry the back and just point it in somebody's face.
Like, hey, look at this.
Hey, cheese.
Oh my gosh.
Gyarados, just because Hyper Beams everywhere would be awesome.
True.
And
you shouldn't have bullied me in primary school.
That kind of is the vibe of that Pokemon, isn't it?
You laughed at my attacks, I laughed at your corpse.
Exactly. But don't you dare laugh at my typing. I know it doesn't make sense.
Right. And then Drifloon.
Just carry her away, the children.
Yes, your escape. Your escape is so long, Batman. You just like, float away.
Sucks to be you.
Now, if you, dear listener, would like to also send in which 6 Pokemon you'd like to take over the world or end the world with, you can do so by emailing us at mail@gocastpodcast.com. Send them in.
That's true.
You never know.
I need to get around to making us an email address, don't I? Yeah, I should.
And you never know which podcast will bring it out. PvP Corner gets this email. Defi's like, Dear Defi, and
This is what happens when they ask the guy who asks his questions a question to say a question.
That's right.
We end the world.
Dearest PvP Corner, please rate this team of 6 Pokemon for an upcoming Pokemon Finals. Yveltal, Dynamo,
This should be a lie. How did you get Groudon below 1500?
Why is Tynamo on this list? I don't understand. Oh, jeez. All right. Well, David, I got to say, on behalf of both of us, thank you very, very much for accepting the invitation to be here as one of our guests. And I got to tell you, it's kind of weird interviewing somebody who's better at interviewing than I am. So,
oh no, I did great.
I would highly recommend anybody listening. You got to go listen to As the Pokeball Turns, and I'm not just saying this because David is here, but because I have binged hours of it at a time, and I can't stop. So I think y'all should probably get on this train as well.
He can't stop, and he won't stop.
That's right.
Won't stop, baby.
That's right. Slogans won't even hold him back. He committed to that here. So,
and especially if you found any of his humor funny, it's definitely worth checking out. Like the dry wit. Oh, it's good dry wit.
It's really good.
The delivery.
I'm dry as a Texas summer.
There you go.
And
dry as a Texas winter too, right? Aren't those also pretty dry?
Yeah, it depends if the ice is up or not.
Mm-hmm.
Where can our lovely listeners find you though, Hamtaro? Like on socials, on Discord, on podcast platforms? What do they have to search for?
For podcast platforms, you just have to look up As the Pokeball Turns, or look up Pokeball. Actually, pop up one of the first ones there. Obviously,
that's good SEO. Good SEO.
Good SEO, baby. Just As the Pokeball Turns for the podcast. On Twitter, you can find me at ATPT Podcast because apparently, As the Pokeball Turns is too long to have as a shoulder handle. For YouTube and Instagram, I'm As the Pokeball Turns because apparently that is long enough to where it actually fits.
Nice.
So, yeah, you can find me on those two platforms. Discord, you can find me as at Hamtaro or at As the Pokeball Turns. I forgot what I have a Discord. Don't look me for Discord. Look for me on Twitter or Instagram and YouTube. That'd be the easiest ways.
Not Twex?
Let Discord happen naturally, Go the other routes first.
Yeah, there we go. Now, I will say this. Whoever took my email at asthepokeballturns@gmail.com, I'm going to come find you because that is my...
Yep, we're going to help you. We're going to spread out and look for clues, gang.
I'll just send an email and say, hi.
Going to come with our powerful Tynamos.
No! Can't have Tynamo without...
Slowpoke in a cowboy hat? Where's Tynamo in a cowboy hat?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Where's Tynamo with a crown of the God King costume?
Tynamo with a rod and a king's crown.
Ooh, there you go. Rules from up on high.
Give it to us, Niantic. Give us more costumes.
Give us what we want, which is cowboy hat, Caterpie.
We're getting costumes
honestly.
in Pokemon Sleep. This finally.
It's true. Oh yeah, happy Halloween, y'all. This is our Halloween episode.
It depends on when it goes out. Happy Thanksgiving.
No, yeah. Hey,
give the thanks.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Australia Day. Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Oh yeah. Geez, I got nothing else. I think you guys
Merry
covered it
Easter.
all. Merry Easter.
Season's greetings. Anzac Day. Remembrance Day. What else happens?
David, thanks so much. Thanks so much for being on.
Happy Labor Day.
We'll catch you guys
whenever
later.
you listen to this. Happy day.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.